Trigger warning. This video contains sensitive content, including references to murder, domestic conflict, and legal controversy. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to Once Upon a Crime, South Africa, where we uncover the darkest corners of real-life crimes from our homeland stories that deserve to be told, remembered, and questioned. Today, we explore one of the most chilling and heartbreaking contract killings in modern South African history, the murder of Chanelle Henning. On a bright Tuesday morning in Pretoria, a 26-year-old mother kissed her son goodbye and watched him walk through the gates of his nursery school. She got into her car, likely planning her day ahead, unaware that it would be her last. Within moments, two men on a motorcycle pulled up beside her vehicle, and in broad daylight, just meters from a school filled with children, Chanelle was gunned down in cold blood. To the public, it looked like a tragic hijacking or random attack. But what lay beneath the surface was a chilling plot involving drugs, hitmen, a custody battle, a broken marriage, and a possible betrayal from within her own home. It would be a case that tested the limits of our justice system and left many questioning whether wealth and influence can buy freedom in a country still fighting for equality in its courtrooms. Chanelle Henning wasn't a celebrity, politician, or public figure. She was a young woman from Fairy Glen, a mother who just wanted the best for her child. But her story would become a headline, a case study, a cautionary tale of how far people can go when anger, custody, and power collide. Who ordered the hit? Why was she targeted? And how did the justice system fail to hold all those involved accountable? This is the full story of Chanelle Henning. A story of trust, betrayal, and a murder that shocked the nation. To truly understand the tragedy of Chanelle Henning's murder, we must first understand who she was, not just the headlines, but the young woman behind the name. Born in 1985, Chanelle grew up in the peaceful, tree-lined suburb of Fairy Glen in Pretoria, one of South Africa's more affluent and serene residential areas. The community she was raised in was tight-knit, safe, and largely free from violent crime, the kind of place where children played in the street until sunset, and neighbors knew each other by name. Chanelle was the only child in her household and was described by family and friends as gentle, shy, and warm-hearted. She had a soft voice, an even softer heart, and was known to be incredibly empathetic, the kind of child who would cry when others were hurt and insist on helping even when she wasn't asked. She was a peacemaker at school and at home, always the first to try and resolve conflicts or stand up for those who couldn't speak for themselves. Her upbringing was a stable and loving one. Her parents instilled in her strong values, honesty, loyalty, and a deep love for family. She was raised in a Christian household, attending Sunday school, and participating in local church events. Friends from her childhood remember her as a quiet but deeply loyal girl, one who made friends easily but valued a small, close circle more than large crowds. In school, Chanelle was a hard-working student. She may not have been the loudest in class, but she was disciplined and diligent. Teachers noted her respectful demeanor, her quiet confidence, and her ability to focus on her goals. She enjoyed creative subjects, particularly writing, and dreamed at one point of working with children. Her love for children would only grow stronger as she got older, eventually becoming a defining part of her identity. While not much has been publicly documented about her tertiary education, it's believed that Chanelle pursued administrative and support-focused work. She entered the working world with the same quiet determination she had always shown, avoiding the spotlight, but always getting the job done. What stands out most in all the memories of Chanelle is how deeply she wanted a family of her own, not for show, but because she believed in the strength and comfort of home. When she eventually became a mother, she poured everything into her son. He became her world, and she made it her mission to protect him, nurture him, and give him the same safe, loving upbringing she had received. But as life often proves, even the gentlest souls are not immune to chaos. Behind closed doors, as her marriage deteriorated and custody battles intensified, Chanelle would find herself in a situation far darker than anything she had known in her sheltered childhood. A life that had begun with innocence and love would come to a tragic and violent end, and the betrayal she would face would come from where she least expected it. In her early 20s, Chanelle Henning was much like many young women of her age, full of hope, quiet ambition, and a strong desire for stability. Those close to her say she wasn't the type to chase after excitement or attention. She sought love that was grounded in loyalty, trust, and family values. And in Nico Henning, she believed she had found just that. Nico Henning came from a wealthy and well-connected Afrikaans family. He was known in Pretoria as a successful businessman with considerable influence. Charismatic, confident, and socially prominent, Nico was the kind of man who turned heads. He exuded charm, and to Chanelle, who was reserved and modest, he offered something she had never experienced before, a life of comfort, security, and intensity. Their romance was fast-moving. From the outside, it seemed like a fairy tale, pairing the quiet girl from Fairy Glen and the ambitious man with power and resources. Friends and acquaintances often described Nico as dominant and assertive, while Chanelle was more submissive and soft-spoken. It wasn't long before the two got married. At first the marriage appeared functional, even glamorous. Chanelle stepped into the role of a homemaker and mother, while Nico continued to build his career and maintain a busy social life. They lived in an upscale area of Pretoria and were often seen attending functions, family gatherings, and church events. But behind the facade, the relationship was beginning to crack under pressure. As the years passed, those close to Chanelle began noticing signs of tension and control within the marriage. While Chanelle never publicly accused Nico of abuse, it became increasingly clear that she was not happy. She began to distance herself from friends, and her cheerful demeanor dimmed. According to testimonies and court documents that later emerged, the relationship had become deeply strained, particularly over differences in parenting style, financial disagreements, and what many suspected was infidelity on Nico's part. Chanelle, who had always believed in commitment, wanted to hold on, but the cracks grew deeper. The turning point came with the birth of their son. For Chanelle, motherhood was sacred. Her son became the center of her world, but rather than bringing the couple closer, their child became a battleground. Nico allegedly wanted control not just over finances, but over who had custody, what school their child would attend, and even who Chanelle could interact with. Their arguments became more frequent, more bitter, and more public. Chanelle began confiding in close friends about her fears, not just about the failing marriage, but about her safety and that of her child. Eventually, the couple separated, and what followed was a heated and prolonged custody battle. Chanelle fought for full custody of her son, alleging that Nico was controlling, manipulative, and unfit to raise the child alone. Nico, in turn, hired high-powered lawyers and pulled every legal string he could find to regain leverage. At times, Chanelle expressed to friends that she felt watched, followed, and intimidated. Though she never made a formal protection order, she made it known that she feared Nico's connections and influence could be used against her. As she tried to move on with her life, Chanelle's priority remained her son. She avoided public drama, focused on being a present and protective mother, and did what she could to maintain her independence. But the pressure was mounting. Behind the scenes, Nico Henning was allegedly plotting something unthinkable. According to later testimony from a co-conspirator, Nico approached a close friend, Andre Gauss, a former debt collector and businessman, and allegedly asked for help in removing Chanelle from his life. Not through the courts, not through custody agreements, but permanently. What began as a turbulent relationship turned into a fatal feud. And in November 2011, the storm that had been brewing finally struck. It was a warm Tuesday morning, the 8th of November, 2011 in the quiet suburb of Fairy Glen, Pretoria. The sun had just risen over the jacaranda-lined streets as 26-year-old Chanelle Henning prepared her 4-year-old son for school. To any outsider, the scene was ordinary. A young mother lovingly seeing her child off, making sure his school bag was packed, gently fixing his hair, and reminding him to be good in class. That morning, like countless before it, Chanelle drove her son to his nursery school in Gasfontein. She likely sang along to the radio or listened to his chatter in the back seat, unaware that these were her final moments. At 7:45 a.m. she arrived at the school. Witnesses recall her smiling and waving goodbye as her son ran through the gates. She then got back into her car, ready to begin the rest of her day. But just a few meters from the school gate, her routine was violently shattered. Two men on a motorcycle, dressed in black, pulled up beside her vehicle at a red light. One of them drew a 9mm pistol. In broad daylight, on a public road, and in full view of nearby traffic, they fired a shot directly into Chanelle's chest, hitting her through the driver's side window. She slumped forward, bleeding and gasping for air, before the bike sped off into traffic. She died at the scene, her car veering slightly before coming to a complete stop. The brutality and precision of the shooting stunned the community. It was not a hijacking nor a robbery. Her handbag, phone, and wallet were untouched. It was clear. This had been a hit. News of the murder spread like wildfire. A young mother gunned down outside a nursery school? It seemed unthinkable. Police immediately launched an investigation, calling in forensic teams, reviewing CCTV footage from surrounding businesses, and interviewing witnesses. Public outrage grew, with many calling for swift justice. Candlelight vigils were held. A community that once felt safe now felt like a crime scene. But behind the mourning, detectives were already uncovering a trail of blood money, betrayal, and lies. Just weeks after the murder, police made their first breakthrough. They arrested Gerhardus du Plessis and Willem Pieterse, two small-time criminals and drug users with histories of petty offenses. Under interrogation, both confessed to being the gunmen, and what they revealed was chilling. They hadn't planned the murder themselves. They were hired. According to their confessions, they were approached by Ambrose Monye, a former Nigerian Olympic athlete turned businessman. Monye acted as a recruiter, offering them 10,000 rands each to carry out the hit. The mastermind behind it all? They claimed it was Andre Gauss, a close friend of Chanelle's estranged husband, Nico Henning. The motive? Custody, power, control. Gauss allegedly wanted Chanelle dead, and they were the tools to make it happen. In the months that followed, Monye and Gauss were arrested and charged with murder, along with conspiracy and attempted intimidation. It was one of South Africa's most high-profile contract killing investigations in years. What adds to the heartbreak of this case is the timing. Chanelle was killed minutes after protecting her son, making sure he was safe behind the school gates. Her last act was one of love, and what awaited her outside was a carefully orchestrated betrayal. Some believe she may have known the danger was near. According to testimony from friends, Chanelle had expressed fears for her life in the weeks before her murder. She had allegedly told close confidants that she was being followed, watched, and harassed, but without formal protection orders or police reports, she faced the danger alone. The killer's men, with no personal connection to her, were just pawns in a much larger game, a game that would continue to unfold in the courtroom, with twists that shocked even the most seasoned prosecutors.
Family member minutes before hearing his fate, while Ambrose Monye cuts a calm figure. Behind him, his family and friends sit emotionless. Gerardus du Plessis and Willem Pieterse think it goes as the middleman and Monye as their recruiter in the plan to kill Henning in 2011. Du Plessis and Pieterse are already serving 18-year sentences after confessing to their part in the murder. Henning was gunned down in a drive-by shooting outside a Ferry Glen crash shortly after dropping off her son. Monye and Gous denied any involvement, but the judge labeled both men liars.
Neither the version given by Monye nor that of Gous, whether assessed conjunctively or standing alone, could pass the muster of being reasonably possibly true. Regarding Monye, I hold him to be a liar.
In the months following Chanelle Henning's assassination, the wheels of justice began to turn. South Africans watched closely as one of the country's most disturbing and cold-blooded contract killings unfolded in court. The courtroom became a theater of shocking admissions, conflicting testimonies, and a web of betrayal not just of a young mother, but of the justice system itself. Gerardus du Plessis and Willem Pieterse, the two men on the motorcycle, pleaded guilty to the murder early in the investigation. In exchange for lighter sentences, they turned state witnesses and provided detailed confessions. They admitted they were drug addicts, desperate for cash. They were approached by Ambrose Monye, who promised them 10,000 rands each to carry out the hit. They were given photos of Chanelle, her car's make and registration, and her daily routine, all provided by higher-ups in the plot. In 2012, both men were sentenced to 18 years in prison, but their cooperation was just the beginning of a much bigger storm. Next came the trial of the men who orchestrated the killing. Andre Gous, the alleged middleman and former friend of Nico Henning. Ambrose Monye, the recruiter and link between the mastermind and the hitmen. Their trial began in 2013, drawing intense media attention. Testimony after testimony revealed how Gous and Monye had planned the hit with chilling precision. Gous had reportedly held a grudge against Chanelle and saw her as an obstacle in Nico Henning's life. Monye, whose reputation had shifted from athlete to underworld fixer, was accused of recruiting the shooters and coordinating logistics. The court was shown cell phone records tracking movements of the conspirators, surveillance footage placing Monye near the scene, bank withdrawals and phone calls linking the men to each other and to the shooters. After weeks of trial, the verdict was handed down. Guilty, both Gous and Monye were sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Chanelle Henning. The judge condemned the crime as cold, calculated, and heinous, stating that the evidence showed the men acted without remorse. But even after 2 convictions, there was still a name on everyone's lips, the one person not yet held accountable, Nico Henning. From the beginning, there had been whispers, and later, open accusations that Nico Henning, Chanelle's estranged husband, was the true mastermind behind her death. During the trial of Gous and Monye, Andre Gous made a damning allegation. He claimed that Nico Henning had offered him $1 million to get rid of Chanelle so that he could gain full custody of their son without legal interference. According to Gous, Nico provided Chanelle's schedule. Nico knew exactly when and where the hit should occur. Nico kept in contact with Gauss right up to the murder. These statements, combined with mounting public pressure, finally led to the arrest of Nico Henning in 2014. He was charged with conspiracy to murder and defeating the ends of justice. The trial date was set for 2016, and the country waited expecting the final chapter of this haunting case to deliver justice. But then something happened. In a shocking twist, prosecutors suddenly withdrew all charges against Nico Henning before the trial could begin. The reason? Key witnesses refused to testify. Andre Gauss, who had previously implicated Nico, now refused to cooperate. The prosecution claimed there was insufficient evidence without his testimony. Other evidence, they said, was circumstantial without someone willing to confirm the chain of events. Despite years of suspicion and public outrage, Nico Henning walked free. To this day, he has never been convicted or held legally responsible for his alleged role in Chanelle's murder. To many South Africans, this was a betrayal of justice. A mother was dead. The hitmen were jailed. The middlemen were serving life sentences. And yet, the one man alleged to have pulled the strings walked away untouched. The Chanelle Henning case left the nation heartbroken, confused, and angry. It raised serious questions. Can wealth buy silence? Can key witnesses be pressured into silence or refusal? Was justice truly served if the alleged mastermind walks free? Chanelle's family never got the full closure they deserved. Her son, left motherless, grew up in the shadow of a crime that still haunts Pretoria to this day. And for those watching the trial unfold, it was a painful reminder that truth and justice don't always walk hand in hand. As we reach the end of this heartbreaking and deeply unsettling case, we're left with more questions than answers, more frustration than resolution. Chanelle Henning was not a public figure. She wasn't a politician or a celebrity. She was a young woman, a mother, navigating life's challenges while trying to protect the one thing that mattered most to her, her son. She was kind, gentle, and by all accounts, deeply devoted to her child. But that devotion and the bitter custody battle it sparked ultimately became the weapon used against her. Chanelle's murder wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't spontaneous. It was meticulously planned, cruelly executed, and rooted in control and power. We watched as two hitmen were sentenced. We watched as the middlemen were handed life terms. And we watched, in disbelief, as the man who was allegedly at the center of the entire conspiracy walked free, shielded by silence, legal technicalities, and perhaps influence. What does it say about our justice system when a young mother can be murdered in cold blood and the man widely believed to have ordered the hit never faces trial? What does it say about the power of money, privilege, and silence in a country still healing from decades of institutional injustice? For many South Africans, Chanelle's story wasn't just a headline. It was a mirror reflecting the painful truth that even in a modern democracy, justice can still be denied and truth can still be buried beneath power and fear. But we are here to remember her. At Once Upon a Crime, South Africa, we don't just tell these stories, we preserve them. Because Chanelle Henning was more than a victim. She was a daughter, a friend, a mother, and she deserved to live. Her son deserved to grow up with her by his side, not with a memory tainted by murder and mystery. Let the story be a reminder. Behind every crime is a person, a life, a family left behind. And let us never stop demanding better justice, better protection, better accountability. Thank you for watching this episode. If Chanelle's story moved you, if it angered you, saddened you, or made you reflect, please let us know in the comments. Share your thoughts, share her story, and help us keep her memory alive. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to Once Upon a Crime South Africa, where we uncover the truth, honor the victims, and speak the names that others may forget. Because some stories, no matter how painful, must be told. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and never stop seeking the truth.